Awesemo Fantasy Football. Are you tired of the industry consensus? Are you sick of that groupthink mentality? Then try our data-driven approach spearheaded by the #1 daily fantasy player in the world, Alex Awesemo Baker. Alex has loaned his projections expertise to the season-long side to give us our first ever premium season-long fantasy rankings. Head over to awesemo.com to find out more about our different approach to fantasy football. Now, let's dive into how those rankings would approach drafting from the 102. Initially, when this draft was done, the pick was Saquon Barkley, but recent updates to the projections give Ezekiel Elliott the slight edge. And while Saquon Barkley does have a massive difference maker in his receiving game, we saw last year with Daniel Jones, his receptions fell by 1.7 per game to a flat 4. That makes a big difference when we know Ezekiel Elliott, being on a better offense, is more likely to score more touchdowns throughout the season. So in hindsight, maybe Zeke should have been the pick here, but both are fine, being incredible talents at the running back position. With the second round pick, George Kittle is the selection. George Kittle is just one of the few difference makers, really one of two difference makers at the tight end position, along with Travis Kelce. His 2019 was scuffed by ankle and knee injuries. But when you look back at his 2018 campaign, it was monumental. His 258.7 PPR points were 14th most by a tight end in NFL history. And of those top 14, only 4 featured 10 or fewer touchdowns. That means that we haven't even seen the best that's yet to come from Kittle. If he actually does find his way into the end zone, a largely fluky stat, we know everything else is going to be there for him. So Kittle at the selection is a pretty easy pick. Austin Eckler at the 302, the other side of the turn, rounds out this team's top selections. Austin Eckler, we saw last year, was an incredibly dynamic player, super efficient. His 9.2 yards per target are the most ever in the past 20 years for players with at least 75 targets. He caught 92 passes on his 108 targets, and he scored 11 times on 224 touches. Those numbers are all great. They're all incredibly efficient, and we want to target efficient players. They will come back down, though, is the downside. That's why he makes it 302, is he's an incredibly talented player, and you can expect him to continue to be efficient, but probably not that efficient. The other hand, booing the detraction of efficiency is Melvin Gordon's loss. He carried the ball 13.5 times and saw 4.6 targets per game. Eckler isn't going to take every single one of those touches, but he will be first in line to get them with only Justin Jackson and Joshua Kelly behind him. So it makes a lot of sense to go after a guy who has a clear 3-down role in his future. At the 411, David Johnson is the pick here. Awesemo's projections just cannot get enough of David Johnson. And we saw how valuable it is to be the Texans running back. You've got Deshaun Watson with his arm, detracting the safeties, keeping them from creeping up, and he's freezing linebackers with his legs. It's a very special player that few running backs get the opportunity to play with. And we saw Carlos Hyde, a player who's pretty washed in his own right, much like David Johnson is heading into this year. He was traded by the Browns for next to nothing, and then Jacksonville felt no need to bring him back. Then what does he do? He goes out and posts his first ever 1,000-yard rushing season, largely on the back of playing in the Texans system. David Johnson has a significant chance to make that type of turnaround in his first season in Houston. At the 502, Tyler Lockett. Awesemo's projections keep it pretty simple. Tie your players to efficient quarterbacks, Russell Wilson being one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the league, up there with Patrick Mahomes. Tyler Lockett projected to lead this team in receiving again. It's pretty simple. Get receivers who are playing with Russell Wilson. DK Metcalf, a fine pick, but Tyler Lockett is the projection to be the top option in Seattle. A clear pick here at the 502. At the 611, another Awesemo favorite, Will Fuller. I mean, what does Will Fuller have to do to get us to like him? Injuries are an unfortunate part of his game, but if the injuries just subside, we know Will Fuller is one of the most special players in the league. Deshaun Watson has thrown at least 30 passes to 12 different players. Fuller leads all of them with a 10.9 adjusted yards per attempt when targeted. When he passes to Will Fuller, he is getting more than when he passes to any other player he's ever thrown the ball to at a significant amount. You know, Will Fuller just needs to stay healthy. He's got Deshaun Watson as quarterback. He's got speed for days. And he's got the one thing he lacks, competition. Brandon Cooks coming off of his worst season in his career, dealing with multiple concussions over the past few years, and then Randall Cobb out of the slot. Those aren't big threats. Will Fuller could be a true #1 receiver and difference maker. At the 611, it's pretty easy. Now at the 702, we sort of take an opposite approach, going with a high floor option. He finished, Julian Edelman here finished third among receivers with 154 targets last year. Awesemo's projections still have him as a top 24 receiver going in the 7th round. He's not a sexy pick. He's a slot receiver on a team that's going to feed him targets, even if they're not the most fantasy valuable targets like Will Fuller's are. That's still a lot of targets to get in the 7th round. Moving to the 811, Sterling Shepard. A handful of alternatives here. Keyshawn Vaughn, who Awesemo's projections are particularly high on. Jamison Crowder, another great pick. and Drew Brees as a quarterback on the board here. All interesting picks. But despite all these awesome options, Sterling Shepard is the pick. He's dealt with a slew of injuries during his time with the Giants, and much like Fuller, it's unfortunate, but injuries don't often carry over from year to year, especially random soft tissue injuries. I can't project Sterling Shepard to miss as many games as he has in years past, and despite missing those games, he's gone over 3,000 yards from scrimmage through those 4 seasons. He's only 27 years old. He's entering his athletic prime, and he should be healthy for the first time since he posted 872 yards 2 seasons ago. This team has a starting lineup, sans its onesie players filled out, specifically missing out on a quarterback, so it's fine to continue picking out those flex options. Fantasy football, at the end of the day, you want to beat your opponents in the flex, and Sterling Shepard gives us the chance to do it. And now we're also looking at an interesting stack here with Daniel Jones, knowing that Saquon Barkley is already on the team. Unsurprisingly, with only 2 picks in between, Keyshawn Vaughn makes it to the 902. Awesemo's rankings surprisingly have Keyshawn Vaughn as the lead back, and it sounds surprising, but Bruce Arians would say that shouldn't be the case. He talked all offseason about wanting to add a running back, thinking they needed someone who could catch passes, and he's talked about the running backs he's had in his past that are the most dynamic are the ones who can do it all, and we've seen Vaughn do it all in college. He caught 66 passes over 4 years of college football. So this team has a pseudo receiver in Saquon Barkley, plus Sterling Shepard. We have to be looking at Daniel Jones at the next pick. And with our final pick at the 10-11, Daniel Jones does make it there. Typically is available here, so it's not awfully surprising. But there was a big run of quarterbacks for this pick, so you get a little nervous watching those quarterbacks coming off the board, knowing how valuable the stack can be. Daniel Jones having a number of crazy performances last year, despite being up and down as a passer, his legs give him a specific floor that few players have access to. Like guys who went for him, Matt Ryan, Breeze, Tom Brady, all went just before Daniel Jones, but don't have that rushing floor, and that's something special that even if Daniel Jones isn't on his game as a passer, he always has that in his repertoire. And of course, if we have the first overall pick or our first round pick and another later pick in the single-digit rounds tied to this Giants offense, there's really no downside in getting the team's quarterback. If the team is going to fail, it's going to kill us with Saquon Barkley at 102 anyways, so why not tap into the upside, double down on our Giants love here. So that's going to do it for the first 10 picks in an Awesemo draft done from the 102. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to hit that like button and comment with your favorite or even your least favorite pick done in this draft. And don't hesitate to head on over to awesemo.com/fantasyfootball to sign up for our draft kit, which includes our rankings, projections, cheat sheets, breakout sleepers, and more, and the draft wingman, which helps you build optimal lineups for your best ball and season-long drafts. All this is $29.95, so head on over, guys. Catch you next time.